Motivation is not a psychological issue, it's an energy issue. Hi, I'm Bo for Bo Fitness, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about why, if you're not feeling motivated, it's not that much to do with a psychological or mental issue, but it has to do with an energy issue. And I'm going to go ahead and try to see if I can explain what I'm talking about here. So, to begin with, let's first look at motivation and where it comes from. Like, what is motivation? Where does it come from? I would say that usually when someone is trying to change an existing behavior, they're trying to do something other than what they're doing right now. The first element of motivation is desire. Basically, what that means is that you just simply want to do something other than what you're doing right now. You want something to change. There's a quote that says, "No mountain seems too high when you don't care about climbing it." Or another one I like says, "Fear is better than apathy because fear makes you do something." So the reason this is important to understand is that when you're first trying to make a change, the person who will, be motivated to make that change is going to be the person who actually cares, to make a change. They want to make a change. If the person does feel motivated to make a change, then usually one of the next obstacles they'll encounter is a lack of belief. So whether they're a drug addict, and whether it's an alcohol or a food issue, many of these people will feel as though, well, I really want to change, I have a desire to change, but I don't really believe it's possible for me. There's a quote that says, "Faith does not make things easy, it makes them possible." So the person that lacks belief, they don't believe it's possible, that's going to be a hindrance to them, moving on to that next step in that motivational progression, which is the next one is the ability area, meaning the person who says, "I want to change, I believe it's possible to change, but I don't really know how to change." And there's a quote here, it says, "If you think education is expensive, try ignorance." So this person, when we get to the ability element here in that motivational progression, this is the person who has gotten to the point where they're now ready to start taking action, and they're ready to start. They believe it's possible to they want to change. They believe it's possible to change, and now they are beginning to want to take steps to change. And this is where the psychologists come into play, and they'll oftentimes try to convince us that, well, the reason people aren't motivated is because it's something going on up in here. They're just not, they're not utilizing the right psychology to change. Or it might even not just be the right psychology, but they just don't have the right knowledge or skills involved in changing. And don't get me wrong, these are really important. Having the right knowledge and skills is a huge part of your success, but it may not be as important as this other one we're about to talk about that's also related to ability. If you think about it, what makes you able to do something? Well, part of it is having the knowledge, the skills, right, to do that. But another big part of that is the energy that's necessary in order to put that knowledge and skill to use, right? So when we talk about energy, what are we talking about? Well, it's just like it sounds, energy to just get up out of bed and do something. That you could think of it as the oomph, the zest, that just that overall energy to be able to do whatever it is you need to do to, change that behavior. When we try to make the distinction between the two of these, think of the knowledge and skill as kind of in that psychological realm, whereas energy is more in the biological realm, meaning that we can study the human body, and we can look and we can actually say, where does energy come from? You think of words that tend to be somewhat synonymous with energy. Things like metabolism is a good one. So someone says, "I have a low metabolism," they're talking about the fact that their body isn't, really creating much energy, right? Think of sort of the opposite too. We can think of someone that says, "I'm tired" or "I'm fatigued." These are meaning basically I don't really have much energy, right? So when it comes to really being motivated, people who are oftentimes very quote-unquote self-motivated, they really seem to just, it's not like they're necessarily engaging all sorts of little psychological tricks and hacks to make themselves do what they need to do, but they're simply just full of energy. You know, we all, I think, know at least one or two people where it's like, man, where do they get all that energy from? Think about, look, little children, they're moving around all the time. They're always doing, you know, things, and they just seem to be loaded with energy. It's when, as we become adults and as we get older, we see our energy levels decline, and we can look at, from a cellular level, and we can see that inside the cell, if there is impaired mitochondrial function, for example, our energy levels go down. So this means that when it comes to motivation, we really want to figure out, how can I maximize my energy? How can I wake up each morning and feel ready to take on the day? And that's going to dramatically increase my motivation. And then if I add on top of that knowledge and skills, that's going to be this recipe for success. So a really good illustration of this, you know, and just to kind of really show how powerful this is, I'm going to relate to a story about actually something that happened this morning. So I was training one-on-one with one of our clients here, and as we were working out, he says to me, we're about to do a set, and he says, I just don't know if I got it in me today. And I said, well, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't got it in you? And he's like, I'm not feeling it. I'm just tired, I'm exhausted. And I said, well, what, what's going on? And he says, well, I didn't sleep very good last night. I said, oh, okay, well, do you know why? I mean, did you eat bad, or were you just up really late, or what's going on? And he says, no, you know what it is, I think, is this weekend I was visiting a friend, and I'm just real depressed about it. And I said, what do you mean you're depressed about it? And he said, well, he's found out he's got like cancer, it's growing into his liver, and he's not doing so great, and it just got me real down in the dumps. So I didn't sleep very good last night, and I just don't got it in me. So I'm thinking, as he's telling me this, I'm thinking, so you don't feel motivated, one, because you didn't sleep good last night. You didn't sleep good last night because you're stressed out and worried about your friend and that interaction. And it got me to thinking about, here he is essentially saying, I don't feel super motivated to do great at this workout. Now the good news is he did show up. Sometimes when it comes to exercise, or you just got to show up and try to do it. And he did a good job of at least being motivated enough to show up. And we still did a workout, and albeit it may not have been the greatest workout he's ever done, he still did a workout and still gets good results from that. But if we look over here on the right, you can see these different components that make up that really help. Now, this isn't a totally comprehensive list, but it is a really important list. Some of the most important elements that make up our overall energy and how much energy we'll have in the day. So we can see things like how good our nutrition is, our stress levels, the quality and quantity of our sleep, what kinds of toxic exposures we have in our life, whether they be chemical, like we're being exposed regularly to secondhand smoke, or toxic people or relationships. So screaming boss, negative people that have a big impact on our stress levels, for example. Our exercise quality and quantity, healthy, loving relationships. Do we have people in our lives who are our friends and who show us love and respect and make us feel really good about ourselves and motivated? And another one that's important is any existing illnesses, a disease, injuries, disabilities. These things can also mess with our energy and our ability to be moving and doing the things that we want to do. So when we look at all these things, it's interesting that we see a pattern emerge. So take, for example, the fellow I was talking about this morning. He says to me, I'm really stressed out and I don't feel very motivated. And so I said to him, why are you stressed out? He says, I didn't sleep very good last night and I don't feel motivated, and he attributes this lack of sleeping very well to the stress level, right, of the interaction with his friend. Now, when you're stressed out, what kinds of foods do you think you typically will gravitate toward? Well, more than likely, foods that are loaded with fat, salt, and sugar. Why fat, salt, and sugar? Well, because our body and our brain knows that when it comes to stress, what's one of the most effective chemicals that helps reduce our stress? It's the first chemical that we produce when we were screaming babies and we were stressed out. And mother's breast milk, there's fats and sugars and sodium. And what we see happen is that when a baby is nursing, for example, that sugar and fat mixture in that milk produces a surge of pleasure chemicals in the brain, dopamine and these opioids, these casomorphines and things that are in these kinds of foods make us feel really good. Well, just so happens that we figured out that, hey, if I eat something with a lot of fat and a lot of sugar and salt in it, it's gonna be like a drug. It's gonna make me feel, relax and help me manage that stress, at least in the moment. But then what happens is, after we eat that junk food, it's only minutes later and we're already feeling even more stressed out because now we just compromised our overall health and energy levels in the process. So we have a stressful experience, which affects our sleep, which the stress can also now be making us, gravitate towards unhealthy foods. If we're in these, again, toxic exposures, we have poor quality exercise, and so on. You can see how these things can all kind of snowball and can overlap and affect each other, really negatively affecting our motivation. And again, motivation essentially being movement. Remember, ability is leading into action. Action equals movement. If we're not moving the right way, in other words, we're not making the right choices, pretty much all behavior is movement of some kind, right? If we're not making the right choices, then a huge part of that, even more so than many of the psychological things, is simply just coming from the lack of energy that we have as a result of not getting the right quality sleep, the right quantity sleep, managing our stress levels properly, eating the right food, getting the right amount of exercise, and so on. So that means, obviously, these are complicated things. We don't have time to go in depth here right now. But what we do want to learn is how can we look at each area, and then what kinds of steps can we begin to take right now to get better sleep, to get better nutrition, so that our energy levels be better, so that we can wake up in the morning and feel like we can take on the world. So this is something that we'll talk more about in class, and as we address these things more specifically. And I hope this, at least for you watching online, sparks some ideas as to why it's super important to really begin to research and understand how can I really get this stuff hammered down so that I can really have the energy that I need to get up, and take on the day.